Are you trying to authenticate your Vue.js app with Azure Active Directory and feeling a bit lost? You're not alone. Today, we're diving into how to set up authentication without the extra hassle of third-party services. I totally get it. Setting up authentication can be a real headache, especially when you find limited resources or have to rely on services that complicate things further. You're definitely not the only one facing this challenge. So, here's the situation. One user asked how to authenticate a VueJS 2.x app with Azure Active Directory. They already have the necessary login information, but are struggling to find a straightforward solution without relying on third-party services like Auth0. Sound familiar? Let's explore this together. The challenge here is that there aren't many Vue.js-specific NPM modules for Azure AD authentication. This can make the process feel daunting, but don't worry, we can work through it step by step. And stick around. I have a great tip at the end that will simplify your authentication process even further. To begin authenticating a Vue.js app with Azure Active Directory, the user should first install the required libraries. This includes the Microsoft Authentication library for JavaScript. Next, the user needs to configure the Microsoft Authentication library. This involves creating a configuration object that includes the client ID and authority URL. Now the user should initialize the msal instance using the configuration object. This instance will be used to handle authentication requests. After initializing msal, the user can implement the login function. This function will trigger the login process when called. Finally, the user should handle the authentication response. This involves checking if the user is authenticated and managing the session accordingly. Fun fact, Azure Active Directory is used by millions of organizations worldwide. It's like the VIP pass for accessing Microsoft services. Now, let's look at the answers provided by other users. An alternative approach to authenticate a Vue.js app with Azure AD is to use idle.js. The user suggests leveraging this library for authentication, providing a simple demo to illustrate the setup. In the demo, the user sets up an HTML file that includes Vue and idle.js. They define functions for login, initialization, and token management, ensuring the app can handle user authentication effectively. The configuration for idle.js is stored in a separate config.js file where you specify your tenant, client ID, and redirect URI. This setup allows for a straightforward authentication process. That's all on that answer. Let's take a look at another one. One alternative approach is to use idle JavaScript for authentication. However, it's important to note that this method may not align with the latest security recommendations, which suggest using PKCE. The user advises researching the security aspects further, as they couldn't find documentation for idle JavaScript that supports this. That's all on that answer. Let's take a look at another one. One user shares their approach to authenticate a Vue.js app with Azure Active Directory. They started by using the Vue idle sample app from GitHub. However, they made some modifications to fit their needs, particularly to retrieve user security groups. They adjusted the Axios query to fetch the security groups the user belongs to, ensuring they receive the necessary data from the API. Here's the tip I promised. Always keep your Azure AD app registration details secure and regularly review your authentication settings to ensure everything is up to date. And there you have it. Your Vue.js app is now set up to authenticate users with Azure Active Directory. Remember, keeping your app secure is crucial. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe for more tips and tricks.